Hey, welcome back to the channel. My name is Hamilton, and here on the channel I talk a lot about all the things I'm building, whether it's technology or businesses or anything in between, kind of the stuff that happens behind the scenes. Today I'm going to be doing a dive into how I make and sell clothes online and kind of how you can do this same thing yourself. So last month I released my newest clothing collection called Dump 45. It's just a collection of images kind of reflecting on the time of 45. So after I released this collection, I got a lot of questions about like, oh, how does this work? What are you using to make this happen? How can I do this myself? So today I thought that it would be a good opportunity to kind of go over what actually goes into releasing a collection such as this and like how I keep this running. So to give you an idea of kind of like what my shop looks like, so you kind of know what we're talking about, I've pulled up my website here, shop.hamy.xyz, and you can see that here is the collection. I've got a few t-shirts, and then I've got a sweatshirt here, and then some stickers. For now, we're just going to focus on kind of the clothing side of things. And I might get into how I do other stuff later on. But this is really the core of kind of what I'm doing. So let's walk through what like buying would look like, right? So you come in, you click your thing, you can click your size, whatever you want to do, add to cart, and then you can imagine when you go purchase it, you're actually going to end up receiving this in the mail somehow. But like, what does that actually look like to make happen? So here, I pulled up kind of this buyer journey, right? So if I'm the buyer here and I just went to my website, which I just showed you, this point of sale is that website. This is like the shop.hamy.xyz. So what happens when you actually buy? Well, this is going to have to look through some sort of inventory, right? The shirt or the clothing that you bought has to live somewhere. And then this eventually gets shipped after you buy it, and then this actually gets to you. But that meant that someone had to go get that shirt, that piece of clothing that you bought, put it in a package, figure out where your address is, pay the postage, anything like that. That all had to be done. But that's kind of like behind the scenes. That's something that you don't really see. So that's kind of like the obvious part of running a shop. But I think that even more so, like, there's even more things that like go on behind the scenes that a lot of times people just don't think about that you actually have to set up if you're doing a shop. So if we think of like the full journey of clothes, like how it would actually come into being and arrive on your doorstep after you made that purchase, there's actually several different steps involved. So before you can even buy something, right, like that, there has to be a way to make that thing exist. So here on the right, like, the first thing that actually happens for any piece of clothing is that you have to actually design it, right? There has to be something that is going to be made in order to actually make the item. And then you also need to be able to actually make it. So I've got this design, like how do I actually get this on a shirt? If it's not on a shirt, if it's not on a piece of clothing, like, and you buy it, like you're not gonna end up with anything, right? And then we've already talked about like the inventory, like it has to exist somewhere for you to buy it, and then the shipping, someone has to go get it and actually ship it to you. So that's actually like the core components that flesh out the flow, the necessities for like running an actual online shop that deals in physical goods. Now there's a few different ways that you can go about this. I kind of think of this as you can be a very like hands-on creator, or you can be a very hands-off creator. I think those are like two big buckets on like the spectrum of like how involved you can be in this process. So a very hands-on creator might be someone that like really cares about like the materials. They want it to be like very, very perfect. Maybe a perfectionist is a good way to describe this. They want to know the like finite details of like exactly where the clothes came from, what hands it passed through, what design is on it. Like they want certain threads, like all things like that. This is like very hands-on, and so that's kind of like this archetype. And for this archetype, they're going to be involved in like every single step in this process. So they're going to be involved in the design of it, the manufacture of it, like where is it being manufactured, who's manufacturing it, the inventory of it. So like how are we storing this item, like what sizes and stuff do we have? Do we need like special sizes? Are we doing special cuts, things like that. And then the point of sale, so like the website, are they customizing the entire thing? Are they building on a service? Did they build it all themselves? And then the shipping, they might have like custom packaging. They might have like some fast turnarounds, maybe send to like specific countries, all countries, like things like that. They're going to be involved in the entire process. And I think this is definitely good for people that really want to customize the experience to fit the business that they really want, the brand that they're really trying to take across. But I think there's also a huge trade-off here of effort, time, resources, because you have your hands in every single bucket. If something goes wrong, or even just to even start that, it's going to take a lot of like thought, a lot of communication, and just time, effort, and resources to actually do that. So my philosophy is kind of more on the hands-off side, just because for me, like building these like designs and stuff is really where the core satisfaction is, but not like the logistics of like shipping things and like inventorying them and like producing a shirt. That's not like my cup of tea. That's not the thing that like I love doing. So I definitely find myself more in this hands-off part, and the hands-off part can be, as hands-off or as hands-on as you want. Like, it's not like there's only two ways to do this. You can kind of pick and choose what components in the process you want to be involved in. But basically the most hands-off that you can be is you're just building the design and configuring like how this is going to end up on a piece of clothing or a print or like whatever your end product ends up being, and then also figuring out how this is actually going to be sold. So obviously if you're building a shop, like it needs to be sold. You can't you could give it completely away to someone else, but eventually you're going to have to like figure out who is even doing the distribution. So you're at least going to have to be involved in that at some point. So here you can see like as the creator, you're really just involved in this design process and the point of sale process, but you're actually removing yourself from this manufacturer, inventory, and shipping process. That's just not something that you have to deal with. Whether you're giving that away to someone else to do, or like a service or an organization or a company to do, like there's a ton of different ways to do that. But this is kind of the archetype for the hands-off creator. Cool. So now we can go into like kind of what I do. I kind of explained a little bit that like I am definitely more of this hands-off archetype. Like I don't get the satisfaction from like manufacturing stuff. Like I don't love making shirts or like sewing them together or whatever. Or I don't love like actually printing on top of a shirt. I don't love like folding it and making sure I'm picking the right size from the warehouse. I don't love like packaging things and like making sure it gets to the UPS or the FedEx or whatever you're using truck, and then like making sure it actually gets there. Like I don't love that. That's something that someone else can do. That's something that like is not exciting to me. So this is something that I definitely try to get other people to do for me. And the way I do this is I use a series of different services to allow me to create and can kind of configure my designs in such a way that like they know how to do everything. As soon as someone buys it, it comes to this kind of like pre-configured service, and they just like create it as I've configured it, and they make sure it gets out to the people. If there's some problem in shipping, they'll deal with it. If there's a problem in inventory, they'll let me know and they'll figure it out. All that stuff. So the trade-off here is that I don't have the ability to optimize as much. I don't have as much control in the entire process, but the pro that I get is that I am spending a lot less time in just like the logistics part of this shop process. So for me, that's like a good trade-off. But if you're someone else that's like super into the logistics kinds of stuff, maybe that doesn't work for you. So that's kind of the philosophy of like how people actually go about creating like clothes shops and how they run it. Let's dive into how I'm actually doing this myself. So obviously here I'm this creator block, and the first thing that you have to do, as I mentioned before, is like add a design. So I write a lot of custom software that produces most of my designs. I have a few older designs that I built with Affinity Designer, which is kind of like a Adobe Illustrator rival. But for the most part, it's just like custom software that I wrote that outputs these things. So that's where the designs are being generated. And then I'm using this service Printful, which does all of my manufacturing, all of my inventorying, all of my shipping, to actually customize and configure my designs to fit on the actual end product. So currently I'm using them for a lot of the clothing, so the t-shirts, the all-over prints, and the sweatshirts. And they also have other things like stickers and stuff, but I'm currently just using them for clothing. So the way this works is like once I've configured it and an order comes in, they will just put it into their order queue, and then once they get around to it, they'll have someone come actually do the printing or do the, whatever else alterations that you decided to do. They'll make sure that it's like the right color, it's the right size, and then they'll store that in their warehouse, and then when they're ready to ship it, they'll just send it to whatever shipping service is best for them, and that's how it gets to the customer. So I'm actually, as soon as someone buys something, I'm completely out of the process. Once I've created it and configured my designs, like I'm not involved, which is like really great for me because I can just be going about my day doing whatever, working on the next design, and I really don't have to worry about any of those logistics. Now that's like the manufacturer, I guess, like behind the scenes side of things, and it's really great that Printful does like all of those things, so I'm not trying to like sew together a bunch of different services, because that just adds overhead on my part that I don't love. And now for the actual point of sale, like where does the person go, like how do they get to the website, how do they actually buy the thing? I'm using Shopify. I considered like building my own website, but it just would have been a lot of work, and I didn't feel that it was necessary for me to do right now. I just wanted to get the shop up and running, and the internet recommended Shopify, so I tried it out, and it's been great. It has a really great integration with Printful itself. So I'm basically using just a pre-made template that Shopify has for my shop. It looks great. I customized some of the colors and stuff, and it automatically pulls in all of the configurations that I built on Printful, and I can decide how I want them to be laid out. And then whenever someone buys something, it just sends over the order directly to Printful, and they go about the manufacturing process to get it to the customer. So again, because I'm using the service, like I'm really out of the entire process. So from buying to shipping, like they do all of that. All I have to do is do the designing, the configuring, and then obviously the initial setup of this system. But now that the system's in place, like I really don't have to do anything. So that's kind of how it works. As for like costs, as I said, there's like a trade-off between being very hands-on and very hands-off, and that's really control. And because you're getting more convenience by being hands-off, there's also like a convenience charge like involved there, because you don't have the ability to do all these optimizations you could if you were like bulk ordering from a specific manufacturer or whatever, and they have to make money too. So for Shopify has like a flat rate per shop, I think it is, of $30 per month, and that's regardless of whether you're selling or not. So even if you're running your store and it's gotten like 0 views and nobody's bought anything, that's still going to be $30. So keep that in mind. I think if your shop gets to like a sufficient size, that's really not a big deal, but especially when you're starting out, that's kind of like just money that's draining from you. On the Printful side, Printful actually doesn't charge a recurring subscription at all. You're really just paying for what they make. And so that's great. There's definitely an upcharge on each of the individual items that you're getting, and that's how they are making money. But for me, as long as you're setting your prices reasonably, so like you should always have your prices higher than the cost. Like if you're not, you're just losing money. That just means that you are never actually losing money on this sale. Like you're always gaining money. And so with the convenience charge, I think that like upcharge is definitely worthwhile for me. And that's really the only charges. So I think like you can definitely build an online store like I have, where it's very passive, and you can still do that very lean. Like my recurring charge is $30 a month, which sounds like a lot, but it's like 2 Netflix subscriptions basically to run an online shop with pretty much unlimited items on it, and I think that's like pretty cool. Yeah, so if that's how I go about all of this stuff. If you have any questions or anything, you can shout me out below. Like this video if you want to see more things like this. Subscribe, and yeah, that's how I build my shops.